Do you worry though? So let's say that a policymaker, US official reads this book and they become convinced that the lack of religious reform is the primary issue, and let's say even the primary cause of the Middle East's woes. I worry about the sequencing issue, which I mentioned earlier, that it can lead to a kind of complacency on the part of the West where they say, "Oh, look, Muslims are kind of backward." And of course, you're writing from within the tradition and as a Muslim yourself, so you want Islam to be better. But when some random dude who doesn't know much about Islam, he'll obviously learn a lot about the early history. But then the dark part of your book is that we started to kind of suck after like 1200 or even maybe before in different ways. So we Muslims have been pretty lousy and disappointing and even pathetic for like what, 7 centuries? So this policymaker might look at that and read it in that way and say, hey, look, we're not going to promote democracy. Muslims aren't ready for that yet. They got to focus on reason and tolerance and liberalism and reforming religious thought. Once they get their act together, then they can be ready for this next step. But until then, they're just a nuisance. Just look at how much they suck, basically.
Well, Shadi, that wouldn't be the advice to that potential, that wouldn't be the advice to that potential policymaker in the West, because I do admit that certain steps that has been taken in Western Christianity, at least, has not been taken in Islam, and I'm working on those issues. But how would this fact, as I would see it as a fact, influence Western foreign policy is a big discussion. And I can see some people looking at this and say, that's wonderful. Let's bomb more Muslim countries and occupy more of them. And I would say, no, that is precisely what you are not supposed to do. You might have seen the paragraph about my book that the West has come to Muslims, not always with humane ideals, but inhumane deeds as colonialism.
Yep.
I say, let me read that sentence just in front of me. I say, that has been a big part of the problem, as it is really hard to appreciate modernity when it comes to you at the barrel of a gun, even as a pretext for that gun. I think one reason that the liberal values that I aspire for has not advanced enough in the Muslim world, although they have been admired by 19th century Islamic liberals like Namık Kemal in Turkey or Muhammad Abduh that you actually alluded to in Egypt. They were Islamic liberals in the sense that they aspired for religious freedom, individual rights, and limited government and democratic process. So the one reason this hasn't happened is that the West has been quite hypocritical about these things. France, when Napoleon occupied Egypt at the turn of the century, in the beginning of the 19th century, he said, I brought you freedom, from the oppressors. And that delegitimized the notion of freedom in the minds of many Muslims, quite understandably. So I'm very critical of Western colonialism and Western intrusions and also support for Muslim dictators. And I'm saying that by doing this, you are actually preventing Muslims from some of the good values, yes, that your civilization has been able to advance, like religious freedom. And I see this as a blame on the Western part, but also when I look at Islamists today, when they say, oh, religious freedom, that's an imperialist lie and that's a colonialist propaganda, I see them as using Western colonialism as their own pretext to refuse human rights, to reject human rights. So to the policymaker in Washington who reads this, my advice would be don't support any more aggressive policies against the Muslim world. Have peaceful dialogues and conversations. Don't support dictators. And, support dynamics that will lead to liberalization. That could be market economy, cultural exchanges, but certainly not any more violent conflicts.
Okay.
Well, so
am I convincing you, Shadi, a little bit?
I think you've converted Shadi. It sounds like Shadi's going to go back and rewrite his book now.